Here's something nobody tells you. There are millions of people right now who genuinely believe they're building wealth. They own stuff, real stuff. They can point to it. They can show you pictures of it. And they're getting poorer every single month. Not because they're lazy, not because they're stupid, because someone, somewhere, convinced them that the things bleeding their bank account are actually assets. And the worst part? Most of them will never figure it out. Hey, I'm Garrett. A while back, I was sitting with a family member who was excited, genuinely excited, because he just bought a brand new car. He told me it was an investment. And I didn't say anything in that moment, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Because I'd heard that word before, from people who owned cars, houses, gold jewelry, side businesses that hadn't made $1 in 2 years. And I started noticing a pattern. The same things kept showing up in the financial lives of people who stayed stuck, not because of bad luck, but because of a dangerous misunderstanding about what the word asset actually means. That's what this video is about. Let's start with the definition most people were never given. An asset puts money into your pocket. That's it. That's the whole definition. Not something that holds value, not something that feels good to own, not something that might be worth more someday, something that right now, today, generates cash, reduces cost, or builds wealth automatically. Everything else? It's either a liability, which costs you money, or it's just stuff. The problem is nobody talks about this out loud. And so millions of people spend decades accumulating things that feel like wealth, that look like wealth, that their neighbors and family members confirm is wealth, while quietly bleeding money every single month. Here are the 10 things that do this the most. Let's start with the obvious one. Because even though it's obvious, people still get it wrong. The car. Not just any car, the nice car. The one bought because you deserve it. The one that costs $600 a month in payments, $180 a month in insurance, and $120 a month in fuel. That's $900 a month leaving your pocket every single month for something that loses value the moment you drive it off the lot. But here's the psychology part. And this is where it gets interesting. People don't buy nice cars because they're bad with money. They buy them because of something called identity signaling. The car isn't transportation. The car is a message to the world and to yourself about who you are. Which means the moment you start earning more money, the car gets upgraded too. This is why salary increases often don't build wealth. The money doesn't stay. It gets attached to a new identity. The car is almost never an asset. It's a monthly fee for a feeling. This one is going to upset some people because your whole life you were probably told that buying a house is the smartest financial move you can make. And in some cases, it is. But here's what they left out. If you're paying a mortgage, paying property taxes, paying insurance, paying for maintenance, and the house is just where you live, money is leaving your pocket every month. That means, by definition, it's a liability. Now, does a house build equity? Yes. Can it appreciate in value over time? Yes. But appreciation is not the same as cash flow. Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, became controversial not because he was wrong about this. He became controversial because people didn't want to hear it. The house you live in doesn't put money in your pocket. It takes money out. The moment it generates income, a rental unit, an Airbnb room, a basement suite, it starts becoming an asset. But just owning a house and living in it, that's not an investment. That's expensive shelter. Here's a question worth sitting with. If you sold everything you own right now, what would you actually have left? In many cultures, and I say this with zero judgment, gold jewelry is considered a form of wealth, and there's a historical reason for that. Hundreds of years ago, gold you could wear was gold you could carry across borders. It was portable, real, and untraceable wealth. But here's what changed. Gold jewelry, especially after you buy it from a retailer, is marked up anywhere from 100% to 300% above the actual metal value, which means the moment you walk out of the store, you've already lost half your money. It doesn't generate income. It costs money to insure. And selling it back gets you a fraction of what you paid. That feeling of security it gives, that's real. The asset value, much less so. Physical gold bullion, bars, coins, is a different conversation. But the bracelet, the chain, the ring you bought for its beauty, that's personal enjoyment. Dress it up however you want. It's not generating wealth. This one is painful because it's wrapped in something genuinely good. Ambition. Someone starts a side business. Maybe it's a small food stall, a handmade product, a social media page they're trying to monetize, an online store. And for months, sometimes years, it doesn't make a profit, but they keep calling it an asset because it could make money someday. Here's the uncomfortable truth. A business that consistently costs more than it earns is not an asset. It's a hobby with a business card. And the psychological trap is this. People are emotionally invested. They've put in time, money, identity. Admitting it isn't working feels like admitting personal failure. So they keep funding it, month after month. Now, businesses do take time to build. That's real. Some of the best businesses in the world ran at a loss in their early years. But there's a difference between strategic investment in something with clear growth signals and pouring money into something because you don't want to admit it's not working. The question to ask honestly, is this moving toward profit, or am I just attached to the idea of it? Some people genuinely believe lottery tickets are a wealth strategy. And I understand why. When you don't have access to stocks, real estate, or business capital, the lottery feels like a financial tool. Someone has to win. Why not me? But here's what the math says. The lottery is designed so that the house always wins. On average, for every dollar put in, less than 50 cents comes back out. It's not an asset. It's not an investment. It's a tax on a specific kind of hope. The hope that one moment can undo years of financial struggle. The tragedy isn't the money lost per ticket. It's the mental energy spent dreaming about a win that could have gone towards something that actually works. The newest phone, the biggest TV, the gaming setup that costs more than a month's rent. These feel like acquisitions, like you're getting something real. And you are. You're getting something real that loses 30 to 50% of its value within the first year. Electronics depreciate fast. Almost nothing you buy in electronics holds its value. But the psychological hook here is what behavioral economists call the endowment effect. Once you own something, you assign it more value than it's actually worth. So people hold on to their electronics thinking they're holding value. They're not. Here's the real problem, though. It's not just the purchase. It's what the purchase signals about priorities. When the newest phone matters more than an emergency fund, the financial foundation is broken, and no amount of nice things can fix that. Here's the thing I want you to really sit with. Every single item on this list has something in common. They all feel like stability, like security, like proof that you're doing okay. The car says, I have arrived. The house says, I am established. The gold says, I have real wealth. The business says, I am an entrepreneur. The electronics say, I can afford the good things. These aren't just financial decisions. They are identity decisions. And that's why they're so dangerous. Because you can't just tell someone that's a liability, not an asset. You have to help them see that their sense of self has gotten attached to the wrong things. The wealthy don't use possessions to signal success. They use possessions quietly and invisibly funnel money into things that work while they sleep. That's the gap. Not income, identity. If you've ever sat through a timeshare presentation, you know the drill. They make it sound like ownership, like vacation real estate, like a smart recurring investment in your quality of life. What they don't tell you as clearly, timeshares have almost zero resale value. Maintenance fees increase every year. And getting out of a timeshare contract is notoriously difficult and expensive. There are entire law firms that exist only to help people escape timeshare contracts. That should tell you everything. Yet people buy them because the sales environment is expertly engineered. You're on vacation, you're relaxed, the presentation is slick, and the salesperson is trained to handle every objection. Not an asset. A recurring expense with the feel of ownership. Wait, savings are bad now? No. Savings are essential. An emergency fund is non-negotiable. But here's a pattern that traps a lot of people who are trying to do the right thing. They save money in a standard account. They feel safe because the number is there. They can see it. But inflation is quietly running at 3 to 6% a year. If your savings account earns 0.5% interest and inflation is eating 4%, you're losing 3.5% of your real purchasing power every single year. The money is sitting there, but it's getting weaker. A savings account isn't an asset that grows your wealth. It's a tool to protect short-term stability. Real asset building requires your money to work harder than inflation, and a basic savings account, above emergency fund levels, doesn't do that. This is the trap of financial safety that quietly becomes financial stagnation. This one is the most controversial on the list because we were all told education is always an investment. And education, the right education, absolutely can be. But a degree that costs $60,000 in debt and leads to a $30,000 a year job? By pure financial definition, that's not an asset. The return doesn't justify the cost. The psychology here is brutal. People spend years in programs, take on enormous debt, and then feel trapped. Because admitting the degree isn't paying off feels like saying the years were wasted. They weren't wasted. Learning always has value. Growth always has value. But the debt attached to that learning? That's a liability that doesn't care about your feelings. The question worth asking before any expensive credential: what is the realistic earning outcome? And does it justify the cost? That's not cynicism. That's the honest math the universities don't show you in the brochure. This is the deepest one, and the one most people will argue with. Your time and your labor are valuable, genuinely. But here's the trap. If the only way you can earn money is by physically being present and working, your income has a hard ceiling. You have 24 hours. You sleep 7. You live for maybe another few. That leaves about 10 to 12 working hours on a good day. Pure labor, no matter how skilled, maxes out at some point. The people who build real wealth eventually stop trading only time for money. They build systems. They invest. They create things that earn while they rest. Now, this is not hustle culture. This is not wake up at 4 a.m. and grind. This is about one simple shift in thinking. Is there any part of my financial life that grows without me having to be there? A rental property, an index fund, a digital product, a business that can run without you. Even one small thing that earns passively is the beginning of real asset building. Your labor alone, no matter how hard, is not enough. It never was. And the sooner that clicks, the sooner everything changes. So what do you actually do with all of this? You don't need to sell your car tomorrow. You don't need to abandon your business or move out of your house. Start with one question. What in my life costs me money every month with nothing coming back? Make a list, even if it's uncomfortable, especially if it's uncomfortable. Then ask a second question. If I redirected even 10% of what I spend on these things, where could it go that would actually grow? Index funds, a small rental, paying down high-interest debt, building a real emergency fund. You don't have to make massive moves. You have to make clear moves. The wealthy aren't doing dramatically different things. They're just much more honest about what's actually an asset and what just feels like one. Here's the thing. None of the things on this list make you bad with money. They make you human. We were all handed a version of wealth that was really just consumption with better packaging. Nice things. Visible things. Things that felt like progress. And most of us, for a long time, had no reason to question it. But now you know the difference. Not because you need to live smaller, but because you deserve to know where your money is actually going. And what it could be doing instead. That's the shift. It's not about sacrifice. It's about clarity.